Welcome to the Modern Classrooms Project podcast. Each week, we bring you discussions with educators on how they use blended, self-paced, and mastery-based learning to better serve their students. We believe teachers learn best from each other, so this is our way of lifting up the voices of leaders and innovators in our community. This is the Modern Classrooms Project podcast. Hello and welcome to the Modern Classrooms Project podcast. My name is Zach Diamond, and I'm a high school media production teacher in Washington, D.C., and a Modern Classrooms implementer. And today I'm joined by Althea Carter, a middle school math teacher. Welcome to the podcast, Althea. It's great to have you.
Hey, Zach. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited because this is an episode where we get to hear from students, although not from them directly. You have some reflections that students have, things they've said to you, things that they've, written down maybe too. You're going to tell us all about that. But before we get started, why don't you tell me and our listeners a little bit more about yourself, what you teach, how you got into education, and how you started your Modern Classrooms journey?
Oh, wow. I am definitely a career switcher when it comes to teaching. Originally undergrad was actually hospitality administration. Go figure. Was in the hotels and trade shows and amusement parks and things like that. So after I got married and we had our first kiddo, it just wasn't an industry that was conducive to doing all of the things, mom, wife, all of those things. So I stayed home for a while, but during that is when that passion aligned as I'm raising and working with the kids, and just it birthed that teaching bug. And so I went back to school, got my master's degree, master's in teaching middle grade mathematics, and I started my journey 16 years ago now. And our family recently moved here to Virginia. And so for the past 5 years, I have been a middle school math teacher. 3 years ago, I started with MCP, and I have not looked back since.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely feel, I've talked about this a little bit. I also sort of switched careers because I was a musician, and I became a music teacher just because we had a daughter, and it's just you can't be living that life and be a parent. I mean, some people can. I couldn't. But
I can do it.
Teaching, while it can be exhausting, can also be very stable. So, Modern Classrooms, for sure, it makes it less exhausting. That's for sure. And it's definitely a math-based, it started in math classrooms, so you lucked out there. Really fits. Also, you're wearing, I don't know if people, we might have some clips on the internet for people to see a video. You're wearing a Wicked sweatshirt, which I immediately noticed because that's awesome.
But wait, Zach, let the people see.
How did you do that? Does it have those sequins that reverse color? This needs to be clipped. I'll find a way to make sure that gets clipped. That's amazing. We should just have a Wicked podcast at this point.
I love it. I'm here for it.
And I don't know if you know this. I've never met anyone named Althea before, but there's a Grateful Dead song called Althea.
There is?
Do you know this song? Yeah.
I do know the song.
So I'll put it in the show notes. Every time we emailed back and forth, the song kind of pops into my head.
That's so amazing.
Yeah.
I just found out about the song maybe 6 years ago. But
oh, really?
Before that, there's a famous tennis player named Althea Gibson, African-American tennis player. So I learned about her in third grade, first time. And then the Grateful Dead song I probably learned about maybe 7 years ago.
Oh, well, I just learned about the tennis player today. So I'll link to both of them, all the Altheas. Yes. But today we have you, and we're going to talk about your class and your students. I guess we're going to sort of dive into things that students have said to you about your class. But before we do, I keep saying before we do, we're diving in now, but I'm curious to hear about how your class worked, because I want to know where these reflections come from. Is it part of a class activity that you do with them? Is it more informal? Tell me about how you get these reflections from your students that we're going to be hearing later.
Awesome sauce. So our class, it started off more formal, where I would use Google Forms for the reflections, but I felt like I wasn't getting enough information from them. So now my reflections from students are more informal, where I'll jot things down. And it's so interesting to see them watching me write the things that they say down. like they always want to make sure that what they're saying is recorded. So sometimes during independent work, I might just go and sit with a pair of students who are working together. I might go plop myself down at a group of kids at the cafeteria table. One of my most recent reflections was on the school bus as we were going to a field trip just the week before school got out. So I'm on the bus with a group of students, and we just start talking about it. Um, and some of my reflections actually that will come straight from like home or parents from what students are telling them and, different conversations that they're having with their kids at home. So I kind of gather from all these different places and record it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think it's also much more authentic that way than the Google Form approach, right? Because I used to do that too, where I would, and I still sometimes do. There are activities in my class where we do reflections, but like it's this sort of eyes open and ears to the ground kind of thing where you're just sort of picking up on where your students are at, where their families are at, where the community is at, and then using that to inform your own practice. I think that's also really cool, like the way that it's not just making them reflect for reflection's sake. Sometimes it's for you to improve your modern classroom, to improve your teaching. So tell me some of them. Let's get into it. What have your students said that has that you've recorded and has, I guess, impacted you in any way that it has?
So I like one of the biggest ones from many of them is that you can't learn this way, or no one likes learning, and they look at it as learning from a video. So the running of my class first is it's mathematics based, obviously. So they may have 6 to 8 minutes of video notes, guided notes from me. The classroom design is more so their notes are numbered. It matches the video, which is usually an Edpuzzle or something like that. Grab the sheet, the same sheet that I'm going through on the video. They'll fill it in guided notes. Then they have some independent practice, which they can work with a group or a partner on. Have a couple like that, and then their mastery check, completely independent. So a lot of students are stuck on that beginning part, that guided notes, doing that part. There was at one point we had one who I guess he just had enough. And so his thing was, no one likes this, it can't work. And he wanted his friends to get in. And so in that moment, because I could see his frustration, and instead of it being a full distraction, I decided to just hold that. It was a group setting classroom right now. Let's all talk about it. That was one of the most eye-opening just experiences, because all of the kids were able to contribute. And it wasn't just one voice, but there were so many different voices, and the kids felt okay saying exactly how they felt about whatever it was they felt, because there was at least one or two other kids that felt the same way, right? But in that moment, he just really, was having a hard time with the video lesson part of everything. So for him, I asked him, I said, how do you feel about going back to traditional for this next upcoming lesson? He's like, yes, that'll be great. And so we did it. I didn't make any comments. I just, went through it the same way, that we've done in, previous years. And at the end, I asked him how it was. And he wanted to say he liked it, but his notes weren't filled out. And I knew his notes weren't filled out because most of the time he was kind of turned around talking to some of his friends. He was playing with things under the table, but I let it happen just so I can show him. And then in the end, he just kind of said he just felt like it's just too much work.
He learned. He figured it out.
He did.
That's fantastic. I mean, I think, first of all, I kind of chuckled to myself when this kid is saying no one likes learning like this, and then what you said is maybe one or two other kids agreed, right? Like sometimes they can have a sort of inflated sense of everybody else feeling the same way that they feel. That's a very middle school thing.
Right. There's a lot of us. It is right. It is very, very much age appropriate. Very much. Yeah,
but I love the responsiveness on your part, right? I love the sort of like, well, let's go back to traditional. Let's try. And yeah, I think that a lot of times students, I've found this too, and lots of guests on this podcast have talked about how students are surprised by the sort of increase in self-accountability, right? but also I guess the oversight from the teacher where we can really see what they're doing, what they're not doing, and they have to do it, right?
Right.
Some kids maybe don't like that.
For that one, I also wanted to add that at the end, hearing from the students who were, fans of the format, they were just like, but it was so slow, Miss Carter. I already knew how to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And so, they were very much not pleased with feeling like they were being held back from moving forward when I did that activity.
For sure.
So another one was just recently we were on a field trip. And so the student decided to use that time because I asked them, we're on a field trip, that you didn't allow them to bring their phones or anything. So I'm like, well, I have you guys here now. Talk to me about how's it been. We're almost done. I won't see you again until 2026 once we get out of school, because this was like the week before we got out of school, the field trip was. So tell me what's been great so far. You've completed almost half of 7th grade. How are you feeling about it? And it just so happens that my team is unique in that 3 out of their 4 teachers are modern classroom educators.
Sorry, wait, Althea, when you say your team, do you mean the math teachers or like the 7th grade teaching team?
The team, so in 7th grade, the middle school model is like we might have 5 teams. Each team has a English, history, math, science teacher. Team 1, team 2, team 3.
So they're getting modern classrooms in all of their subjects or most of their subjects?
In 3 out of 4, right, of their core subjects, our students, because we have one shared group of about 100 students.
Okay, that's awesome.
And so the 4 of us share that group of students, and 3 out of their 4 classes are modern. They're science, English, and math are modern classrooms.
Wow, that's awesome.
So, yes. And some students are coming from some, I want to say trauma-based, but maybe courses that were labeled modern classroom, but might not have been properly implemented at the time. So they're kind of having some, So we had some that came with a little bit of, I can't do this. There's no way I can do this. And then my science teacher and I are just kind of like, well, give us a chance. Give us a chance. And if it doesn't work, we'd be more than happy to, switch your team or whatnot. And those students, I want to get to that reflection. That was just one of the best ones.
Okay.
But during that time on the field trip, so I asked about what's working. What do you guys feel should be different or not different? And so they're like, well, I like the ability to choose, when I do and how I do things. But one of the major things that I hadn't even realized that I stopped doing was class-wide reviews, like right before like a major test or quiz or things like that. I had so many independent pieces. So like when they complete the study guide or the online game that I've, kind of set up for self-pacing, we just moved on to it. But they told me, they was like, the only thing that we wish that you would start doing is like a whole group class-wide review before test. And I was like, I don't do that anymore. I want to start doing that again, which I did love doing it, But so that was one thing that because of them, I started implementing again. And that actually did raise and change how they perform. Like I literally saw it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a really important reflection, I guess, for us as modern classrooms teachers to keep in mind as well, because I had a similar experience. I mean, I do sort of project-based learning and there's no tests, so there was no review. But like, I think that in implementing modern classrooms for the first time, I also became a little bit too hands-off. I was like, this is just all, I can just, it's so easy for me. I can just give you all the work and you all just do it. And I, coach and guide and do what I need to do.
That's it. And facilitate, right? Facilitate, encourage, promote. Yeah.
Right. As I've become a more experienced modern classrooms teacher, I have started slowly implementing more and more pieces. And that is feedback that I get from my students, right? We'd like you to be a little bit more hands-on, even though I'm like, come on, I'm like sitting with you. I'm like literally with students for an hour and a half. Like all of the whole time, but
90-minute block, absolutely.
Yeah. But they're right. It's like, sometimes it's not just, and obviously I don't think that I was, or that you were like throwing them in the deep end and being like, later guys,
right.
Sink or swim kind of thing.
But to them it might have felt that way.
Right. I think that they there is obviously a lot of sort of conditioning that has gone into them by the time they get to seventh grade. And now I'm teaching, I was teaching middle school and I experienced that too, but now I'm teaching older kids and it's even more ingrained, right? Like the teacher should walk us through this. And that accountability piece we were talking about before, it could be hard for them, and having a little bit more support in the form of like full group things, not self-paced things, not independent.
Right.
And it builds community, right? Like
it does.
It's all part of a sort of a well-oiled machine, a functioning classroom. And so I think that's important for us to remember, right? It's not just about doing self-paced activities the whole time.
Now, I must say, having multiple teachers or kids who share teachers who do it also opens up a whole new stream of reflections from them. Which just brought to mind one where we both had playlists, she and I would do our playlist looks similar, but the way that student access information is way early on. Now we use Radio Tracker. Before we had our playlist, the student would just come to me and they were like, Miss Carter, why don't you do your playlist like Miss So and So? And I said, how does Miss So and So do their playlist? And they walked me through it. Like that was direct from the students. Had they not brought that to me, it would have still been done this way. And they all were on board. It was like the whole class wide, like, yes, do it this way. And it was a slight change. And sure enough, and I went to her and talked to her about it. And she's like, yep. And I just love the fact, too, that we develop that kind of environment for them to feel okay.
Yeah.
Letting us know.
Yeah.
But
giving you that feedback, right? I think that's sort of like gone unspoken here, but that's a really important part, right? Like you've created an environment where they're feeling comfortable giving you that maybe even critical feedback, right? Particularly that one kid who thought that no one liked it, but even this, right? Like if the class is unanimously saying, "Oh, Miss Carter, maybe you could try doing this," that's cool. That's like really involved. That's buy-in, right? And I think, we often talk about like the teacher bestie, right? Like somebody supporting you and also somebody that you can kind of bounce ideas off of and you can try out their ideas, like in this case. But I actually think it's really cool that you didn't get the idea from the teacher. You got the idea from the students who have that teacher.
Yes.
They're just like so involved with their learning. They're like, we learn better this way, even if they're not necessarily thinking about it from the sort of metacognitive science of learning side of things, right? Which is what maybe we would do as the teachers, but like they're like, this is just easier on my brain, right? Like, I don't know, this works better for me. And so, yeah, I love that you're creating that environment for them, and I love that that they're able to share that with you and be that involved in their learning.
Yeah.
Was that the one that you were going to say before, like one of the best reflections, or is there another one?
One of the best reflections was coming from a student, like I said, who had experienced, I guess, some teachers that were trying to implement, first-time implementers. I'm still working out the kinks, and they felt students completely overwhelmed. It was just kind of one of those things like it might have been the first year of grade slipping and just feeling, just very, very much overwhelmed or in too deep. And so when they found out that they were coming to a team where most of their teachers were modern classroom, they didn't think they could do it. And so that was on me and my teacher, Betsy, who they put back together. They separated us last year, but they put us back together.
Okay.
Yes. So we said, give us a chance. And when she gave us that chance, it was just, this is the best of it. She was one of the ones on the field trip. And she just said, I'm really glad that I stayed on this team. And I was just like, it was just a lot to hear a student like just say that, because she was adamant that she just couldn't do it. And I said, so how's it working though? Like, you have so many more modern classroom teachers. Last year you said that it was kind of tough, but she was like, but it wasn't like this last year. She was like, this year. So well, what's different? And she was like, the ability, one, for them to work together in community. I guess I don't know how it was designed for her previously, but she felt like she didn't get enough time to work with her classmates on different things. And another thing she said she feels like there's a lot more patience with her mastery checks and mastering the content. So she's like, every time that whenever I don't do well, it's like, you'll walk me through it or talk to me about, where I missed. She's like, and then I'm able to, give it another chance. And so, like, knowing the kids value that, I do have to be careful though, because I feel like some might take advantage of that aspect. But it seems like a lot of them truly, truly value like that ability to make the mistake, get guidance on the mistake, and go back and try it.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a misconception that teachers have that students don't care or don't want to learn. There's like 1,000 reasons why a kid might be distracted in class or checked out or not motivated. A million, a billion. There's so many reasons, and they want to succeed. Like, they want to learn, and giving them that space is what it's so interesting, right? Like, I don't know, I guess, but I kind of doubt that the actual workload changed. The overwhelm was coming from something else, right? Like, giving the student the space to try again, I'm guessing also like the environment where she could feel comfortable giving you feedback took some of the pressure off, right? Where she could come and talk to you. I have students that are like, they'll come to me privately, right, at lunch or whatever after school and be like, I need an extension, right? And I'm like, okay. I don't, like, sometimes we got to get things done, right? Sometimes my grades are due and I got to put a grade in for you. We're on this deadline together, but like where we can, I think it's usually good to give kids a little bit of grace, right? And the model has certainly allowed me to do that more. And it's interesting to hear from students. I mean, that one to me is like, it's great to hear from the students and it's great when they can articulate that, but it's also like, you can just see it. You can just see it in a modern classroom, right?
Yeah.
Like all the kids, there's just this sort of like lifting of this weight that we all have, teachers and students alike. It's just so much less pressure in a modern classroom. That's my experience.
I agree. And I definitely feel like that for, our teacher side. And I do think from middle school, they have to have that grace for that learning to do that. You know what I mean? Because coming from elementary school or, even sixth grade when they come in seventh grade, that accountability factor is not innate for them. It is not something that they do well. I mean, we have grown-ups that still can't, manage that aspect. But I think the biggest part is just creating that space for them to be able to give you feedback, for them to be able to reflect on, even if it's something that I might change for just one kid on how I do certain things. He might have to come directly to me to get the next assignment. That's fine because for some reason, the sequential or the setup of the learning design, it just doesn't work for this one kid. So, but them feeling comfortable enough to, want to tell me that, hey, when I go over there, maybe it's just too many papers over there. So he might say, is it okay if I just come here to get the papers? Or I might tell him, well, if it's too much, just come get the paper from me. But I think that's like one of the biggest things in that learning, that stepping stone, giving them the grace to learn how to manage their learning.
Yeah. How do you balance the grace and the accountability? Because I feel like if you go too far in either direction, like if you go too far on the accountability side, you put the pressure back on and that's not good. And then if you go too far on the grace side, then like, while they all want to succeed, some certainly seventh graders maybe lack the executive functioning and they will start to be like, oh, she's never going to make me do anything. Right. How do you balance that?
So our classroom is definitely set to where the one non-moving day is our unit test. Everyone takes the unit test on the same day. You have everything else just needs to get done before then. So I would do spot checks. Who's where? I'm not sure if you guys have, discussed like Wavio tracker or anything like that on the show yet.
Yeah, we have a whole episode about it. I'll link the episode and I'll link the tracker too. Yeah.
Beautiful. So that's one of the things about the kids. It's great again because they're on a team where 3 out of 4 use the same thing. So they're updating. They'll put things. We'll display that and we'll use that to see who's where. A lot of times I may have to pull the small group, those that might be taking too long, which kind of forces them out of that. And then I put them on deadlines because now I need this from you by here if we're going to get it all in prior to your unit test. So some of them don't like switching to that deadline accountability practice, but sometimes it happens. On the flip side, some of them are so driven by incentive that I can use that. So I have the soft deadlines for all their assignments. There's a due date, but of course it's a soft due date. And I actually give rewards for completing it by the due date. So I have like a little punch card. You know, when you go to the restaurant or the coffee shop, you get this frequent punch card. So I use those. They have like 10 punches. And then I have a wheel, kind of like the little Wheel of Fortune wheel. They'll spin the wheel at 10 punches, and it's like, all the free things that I can muster up, getting to choose the music in class or lunch with friends. That's one of my biggest ones where them plus 3 friends from anywhere in 7th grade can come in my room and they can watch, I don't know, for some reason 7th graders like watching Bluey. Watch Bluey, all right, on the big screen, but it's just them and their friends, like having a private lunch. Just anything that I can think of. I have like special seating in my room that can stay there for the entire block, 90 minutes. So just those little things that they're just so eager to achieve kind of helps those that are motivated by incentive.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. I mean, like, it is a balance, right? We can't just let them do whatever, whenever. You're still sort of helping them develop those executive functioning skills. They need them. They need them in middle school for sure, and they need to develop them for high school and beyond.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love that. I love the wheel idea too, and the little punch card. I might steal that. I don't know. I feel like I had this sort of like when I switched from middle school up to high school, I had this transitional year where the kids were like not responding to anything I said and were like no fun. I was like, what's going on? Is it me? High schoolers, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, they're a little bit more subdued. And like they do love their private lunches, and I bet that they probably also would watch Bluey. So
oh yeah.
All right. So do we have any more reflections before we close out the episode?
So every now and then I might get some feedback from parents.
Okay.
I know, which is very interesting because, of course, all of their feedback is only coming directly from their 12-year-old, their little 12-year-old nugget.
That's kind of the unfiltered, like, and they only hear that one side of the story. Like, what they'll tell you what the kids are saying.
And usually the feedback only comes if little Timmy's missing a few assignments or,
Right.
So it's just interesting to hear how they describe what happens to the parent, because I'm assuming that that's what the parent is giving me in the reflection. So a lot of the feedback or reflections I get are, Miss Carter, I just don't understand how you expect any students to learn if they just watch videos all day long and are not allowed to ask you any questions.
What?
Like, what? So oftentimes, what's really helpful when I get those is to actually get the kids and let them read it. And then I'll ask them about it. Sometimes they'll say, well, no, that's not what I said. Or sometimes they'll actually like kind of feel like that's what happened. And I do notice that like for my slower workers, it's kind of how they feel. They might have taken a long time on the video. Granted it's 8 minutes, it may have taken them 20 because I don't know, pausing, going to the restroom, whatever. And so I use that opportunity, one, to kind of go direct back and forth with them. Like, you have access to me at all times throughout the class. You'll see me working with somebody. You can even come and just say, can I be next? Or you can sit at that time, depending on what's happening then. I don't necessarily have like a formal take a number because I try to get to all the kids throughout the entire block. But if you're ever feeling like, you're falling behind or you just need some help catching up with something, you can come sit with me at my kidney table. So I use that to kind of actually direct conference with the student. And then I'll respond to the parent basically on the format of the class and how it should go. But, let me know after you speak to so-and-so today when they get home, let me know. And usually I don't hear back from the parent after that. But to me, I kind of feel like that's good because at least they are feeling some peace and they may have spoken with their child, and that might be why I haven't heard back. But
right. And if you do hear back, then you're in a dialogue with the parent, right? And you can,
right.
Maybe that's more feedback for you that you can act on. But I actually think that's really cool because having the student read the parents interpret, it's like, was this a game of telephone where like my class got like passed through the brain of a 7th grader into the mind of a parent who then emailed me back and like I'm getting this weird messed up interpretation of what you think? Or is this actually what you said? And if it is, now is our chance to talk about it. Both, I think, because if the kid's also like, that's not what I said, that's a lesson too. It's like communication is hard, right? Sometimes when you're a 7th grader, everything comes out like you're just complaining about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not. I don't know. Sometimes they're more articulate than that.
No, that's accurate.
You know what I mean? Like I think in both cases, it's a really great opportunity for the student to reflect themselves, right? And it could result in feedback for you. It could result in dialogue with the parent, or it could result in a productive conversation with the student then and there. But either way, it's powerful reflection for the student, and I think that's really cool. That's really cool. Well, that's fantastic, Althea. What goals do you have for yourself? What do you hope to see in the future? I love the informal reflection. I'm sure that's going to keep going. That seems like just an attitude thing with you.
Love it. Absolutely.
But what else? These goals could be personal, professional, anything.
Personally, so I'm currently on track to completing my mentorship.
Oh, okay.
So I am currently enrolled in the mentorship program to become a MCP mentor, to get a few more teachers on board with this thing because it is phenomenal. Ideally, for like in my class is to kind of get to that, even 3 years in, and I know for me, it's probably because I'm running 2 curricula at the same time, to become a little bit more seamless. I still feel like I'm treading water some of the time, just trying to stay afloat with keeping up with the grading and student feedback and things like that. So, but I definitely see the light at the end of the tunnel. It is as I'm getting further into the semester and further into the school year, I'm noticing some of the things that I started picking up along the way later in the year last year. I'm now coming into that now, which kind of changed things for me. So professionally, I definitely want it to become kind of more of a seamless thing. And where I might not have as much misconceptions as far as feedback from the students on how things are supposed to be run, maybe just being a lot clearer on what's expected from them versus what they should expect from me.
Yeah, but I think like you're absolutely on the right track. And I mean, I'm not like an expert here or anything. You're the expert in getting feedback from the students, but like what a good way to move toward that goal. You know, listen to them, and every little change that you make is going to streamline the class and make it more student friendly because they're the ones telling you what they need. And I love that. I love like, I'm glad that we got to sort of dedicate a whole episode to just sort of like the honoring hearing from students.
Yes, I'm telling you, it's what you want to do. I promise you. And even if you're not a modern classroom teacher, let the students tell you the things they think might work. I mean, and give it a shot. It's just so amazing hearing their voice and allowing them to kind of build and foster shape their learning environment.
Yep. And they're the experts, right? Like they're the ones doing it. They're the ones going class to class every day. And it's important that second part, right? Where you actually try the things. You can't just like have them say stuff and then not do anything. Cause then they'll just get discouraged and not want to tell you anything. But if you show them, oh, you said I should try this, so let's try it, right? And then they can either see, oh, actually this worked, or this completely bombed. My 12-year-old brain came up with an idea that wasn't actually that good. But sometimes they do. Sometimes they come up with the best ideas ever, and they, like I said, they really know, right? And at least even if they're not the ones designing the classroom experience, at least they can give you feedback on what they're struggling with, so you can then sort of tailor the experience either individually to them or to the whole group if that's beneficial. So yeah, what a great takeaway. Althea, if our listeners would like to connect with you and talk more about this, how could they do that?
I am in Chesapeake, so Althea.Carter at CPS Schools. Now there's just one S. It's a very weird. CPSCHOOLS.com.
Okay. Don't worry. I'll put it in the show notes. So people can just click on it from right there.
Yes. Email me anytime.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much again for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks, Zach. Have a good one.
Thank you so much for listening. Listeners, remember you can always email us at podcast@modernclassrooms.org, and you can find the links to topics and tools we discussed, as well as more info on this week's announcements and events, in the show notes for this episode at podcast.modernclassrooms.org. We'll have this episode's recap and transcript uploaded to the Modern Classrooms blog on Friday, so be sure to check there or check back in the show notes for this episode if you'd like to access those. And if you enjoy our podcast and it's been helpful in supporting you to create a blended, self-paced, mastery-based learning environment, we would love if you could leave a review. That does help other folks find our podcast. And of course, you can always learn the essentials of our model, if you want to go beyond the podcast, through our free course at learn.modernclassrooms.org. And you can follow us on social media at modernclassproj. That's PROJ. We are so appreciative of all the hard work you do for students and schools. Have a great week, and we'll be back next Sunday with another episode of the Modern Classrooms Project podcast.